Hey, it's Paul here from the Off the Comma podcast. And if you've been following the podcast, you already know that it's about amazing human beings sharing amazing stories about their experience with being stuck and getting unstuck. And you've probably wondered, hey, whatever happened to that guest? What's happened since they were on the show? So that's what this is all about. We are checking in with various podcast guests and just taking 15 minutes to see what's going on in their world. So, deeper connection, learning more about our guests, seeing how life unfolds for them. Enjoy this conversation, and we'll see you on the next one. All right. All right. We are back with another one of our podcast guest check ins. And this time we are going to be catching up with Tony, who is a guest who's very important to me, a new friend of mine and colleague. And Tony was interviewed, he was one of our earlier guests last year in 2023, episode 10. And when we talked to Tony, he was really sharing some stories and experiences with us about where he found himself sitting on a comma with making difficult decisions and timelines, and also kind of the concept of letting go, which I know we've heard and talked about on quite a number of episodes. So that's the setup. Tony, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you, first of all, for coming back and talking to us. And tell us, what have you been up to? What have you been doing since you were on the show?
Okay, thank you, Paul. Real pleasure to talk to you. And I spend a few minutes talking about what's happened since then. As you recall, there were sort of two themes to my original podcast, but they had a commonality about being stuck and making decisions in a timely manner. One of which I won't go into in any more detail, was around my business decisions and some of the difficulties I've had, as most of us have when we've changed our business models to adapt to the economic climates that we find ourselves in. And that was the sort of first point. But then more latterly was my conversation with you about my sober coaching business and how that being stuck in a position where I took longer to make a decision about finally taking alcohol out of my life. That was the second bit. So those are the two themes that ran through where we spoke in episode 10, which seems like a lifetime ago, I must admit. So the things that are going on, I guess, in my life since then and follow on from that is, as you well know, Paul, I've been contemplating retirement for a while. Here I am in my 68th year, still thinking about what retirement might mean for me. And I'm still not any clearer on what that might look like. When I was talking to you in October of last year, retirement looked fairly imminent, but it hasn't happened that way, as it never does with working for yourself. And I find myself in an interesting position. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. Well, I think there was sort of three things that were going on for me. There's this contemplating retirement and trying to work out what that might mean for me. I don't think it'll ever mean stopping working. I don't think that's my definition of retirement. I think there will always be something for me, but I'm moving towards a different set of imperatives and motivators than I was originally. Part of that, I think, was echoed in some work that you and I did back in October as we jointly helped launch Andy Blackman's business, and how that has, for him, taken off. And I think for me, that was just a really useful point in my thoughts, my process, because I've often been helping people in their business sort of sense, but actually getting involved in a startup is something I hadn't done before, and so that appeals to me a bit more. It was a great day getting Andy talking to some of his potential clients in that wonderful bar in Manchester. And I don't know if you've followed his exploits now, but he's now in Abu Dhabi talking to the people over there. So that's great. So this idea of wanting to work with other sober coaches is appealing to me. And again, for my own sober coaching business, that's taken off a little more. I'm currently coaching, as you'll know, my coaching is aimed at midlife men, And I'm glad I chose that sort of that description, because it's allowed people to define what midlife is themselves. Although
Hmm.
typically my clients are of a similar age group, because I am. I'm now currently coaching a 35-year-old guy teaching English as a foreign language in the Middle East. So it's yeah, he defines himself as middle age at 35. That's cool for me. Great environment for
Everything is relative, right? All about
absolutely.
perspective.
Sadly, it brings into the sort of like the fable of the 3 score years and 10 bit, which by any definition means, I've only got 3 years to go, or as Janie would put it, well, I'm on Sunday. You and
Mm.
I'll understand that a bit. So the sober coaching is something that is taking more of my time and my energy. I desperately want to get um, men talking about this, something I know you're passionate about as well. We, as a agenda, don't spend our time talking about the challenges we all face. We'd much rather keep those things in our heads and drive ourselves nuts and the people around us nuts. But unlike the ladies in our lives who are much more open about their feelings and their thoughts and their concerns and anxieties, I think guys just clam up. And I'm still pursuing the idea of having some local meetups where I am in Reading in the UK, to get not just men talking, but to start the process of getting out there and making people aware that there are some alternatives to just sitting there bottling it up. I think one of the big challenges, certainly in the UK, maybe the same in the US, that we've got is that most men go and talk to other men in the pub. And
Hmm.
therefore, when you take away the alcohol, they find a challenge going and talking to the other men in the pub. So we've got to find a solution to that. I think Andy's event in Manchester led me to believe that there is a way to do that, and I'm actively pursuing that with some of the coaches down here in Reading in the UK. The other thing that I've become more involved in, which is again the answer, or part of the retirement thing, is as I think I said to you once, my work seems to always take off when I book a holiday. So Jill's answer to that is, book more holidays and we get more work. Pay for more holidays, which is great.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. So out of the blue, shortly after the Andy episode, I got invited to come and work for a local authority here in the UK to help them manage an application that they've had from their local airport to increase, or in fact double, the operating hours. So this is a business airport. This isn't a commercial airport. This is where millionaires fly in their planes, to a plane,
Hmm.
or if they're not flying themselves, they've got their dogs flying out to wherever it might be. Um, so you can imagine a fairly emotive topic. There's a lot of public interest. Dear Greta's been over to greet us and protest at the council offices, and the council are now considering the application. Won't go into the details of that. What they've asked me to do, because I'm no planning expert, is to manage the process, because instead of the appeal that you might get over in the UK if you want to build a house in your back garden, which might have 10 people object, they've had 3,000 people object to this.
Hmm.
Very yeah. So I'm learning a bit more about the global impact of jet travel. It's opening my eyes to some things that I perhaps hadn't considered before, but it's a fascinating project to perhaps end my professional career on, he says again, and one which I feel comfortable with, because it has links to my grandfather, who actually served at the airport when he was in the RAF back in 1920 something.
Wow.
So it seems like, my ancestors are calling me back to a point where I might find a convenient and perhaps an apposite place to retire. but who knows? I might have to book
Okay.
another holiday.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much there, and it's I see some cool things for me at least. This kind of just acknowledgement of still got work to do, and I still want to work, and I'm thinking about what retirement looks like, which involves still doing things and contributing and being productive or whatever words are important to you, and just a lot of like passion and meaning in the things that you want to do. Like I definitely see that. And I obviously we don't have time to on these check-ins to go into all of it, but there's so many avenues we could explore to learn more. But I definitely see you definitely haven't slowed down. You're thinking about what slowing down might look like, and yet still the importance of meaning and purpose is there for you.
And some of that has become it's sort of filtering into my everyday life. I'm finding as a coach, my coaching skills are developing all the time. I feel that I'm becoming more authentic. I think I'm becoming more of the person I was meant to be, rather than hiding all that, through alcohol and numbing me out things. But I've started noticing myself more, which is really quite interesting, putting some of these things that I'm learning into my personal life and behavior. And I think in the podcast I talked about pride quite a bit,
Hmm.
and something happened to me fairly recently where one of my sons said to me about what I'm doing now, how proud he was of me to be doing this. And that meant a huge amount to me. It's not often that we get the opportunity to have our children say they're proud of us. And that meant a huge amount to me. And that's just sort of made quite a difference to the way I look at things, which is great. And
Mm.
then, so what to that is Mark, and you've met my son Mark, so you know who he is. So his answer to my retirement is he's invited me to join his business.
Hmm.
Because
More.
because there are people of my age in the UK who may need the equity in their house uh,
Mhm.
to fund their social activities, their leisure activities, or probably more so their health activities, because
Mhm.
sadly our NHS service is not well resourced at the moment. So there's this whole thing around lifetime mortgages, or equity release, it's been called, that he feels is something that um, he might like me to be involved with him in. So
Okay.
I could be training for another year and a half to do this,
Well, and it
but
seems
hey,
like well, it seems like to me, I mean, it's yet another possibility, right? And what I hear for you is that there's lots you can explore and nothing that has to be a forever thing. So
and I think
I
it
sense
comes back
interest
to
there.
yeah, it comes back to a point. I think we've all acknowledged, Paul, that and this is the beauty of things like the things that you're doing, and particularly the video things like this. People have always bought from people. People are always identifying with people. People, when you see someone that you can identify with, or looks like you, or feels like you, or talks like you, there's a resonance there that changes the conversation.
Mm.
And whilst we're living in this wonderfully wired world where everyone can talk to everyone, um, and some of that goes on in, obviously in social media, which has its benefits. I don't think you can replace this face-to-face stuff. And clearly,
Right.
my son Mark believes that people in his business that can relate to me are more likely to talk to me than they are to him.
Mm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there you go. So that might be another part of the future. But I think,
Yeah.
I'm clearly on the path to wind down my consultancy business. That is something I've done for 40 years, something that I want to stop doing now, and put my efforts into some of these other things, and help other people.
Yeah. Oh, I hear that. I hear that for sure. Transitions. And you and I are going to have more conversation after we stop recording here. And you even
Yeah,
said something here, like just the value of these. If no one else, gets anything out of it, there's something you said here that was directly related to something that just came up for me this morning as an idea.
yeah,
So I'll share that with you off camera. But again, you just never know. Like, share your story,
mm,
and you just never know what's in there that somebody else might be able to take and carry. So
absolutely. And I think,
thank you.
I've listened to to many of your podcasts, and some, don't immediately resonate, and some of them you're not sure about. And but there's this saying that I've come to find about think transferable. If that thing or that issue or that, what someone's saying isn't immediately relevant to you, think about how it could be transferred to something that is relevant to you.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
found that in your podcast, there's always been something out of, every one of them that I've picked out and thought, well, that's reminding me of something, or that could be used in so and so.
Yeah.
And let's face it, this talking to each other stuff or listening to each other is no new invention. We just used to read books.
Yeah. Yeah.
We drew out of those books whatever was relevant for us. We interpreted those books in a
Yeah.
way that we chose. So I don't think anything's new in all that, and I'm just glad that we are able to have a much wider library, if you like, to choose,
Hmm. Yeah.
which we wouldn't have been able to previously.
I agree 100%. And before books, it was sitting around fires and telling stories to each other, right? So that's why I
Absolutely.
love this work. Tony, thank you so much. We never have enough time for these check-ins, but I wanted to keep them brief, and you gave us just a whole rich nugget full of your updates. So I'm going to put your contact information in the comments below this video. It's going to be on YouTube. And thank you so much for coming and telling us about what you've been up to.
My pleasure, Paul, and thanks as always.
Yeah, we'll be talking to you again soon.
I'm sure.